And same thing for toxicity. I think the toxicity, like, dude, Bitcoiners are the nicest people I've met ever.
It's an
Like, that's
amazing
it, right?
community.
It's an amazing group of diverse people with different interests, but like uncompromising integrity and like intellectually rigorous thinking that is super critical of mainstream narratives and narratives in general is is the common denominator to everyone. And I think this is super, I mean, it's amazing because like you realize how much of a better person you become, right?
Yeah.
Like personally, I've grown like tremendously over the last 3 4 years, being
Yeah.
exposed to that intellectual rigor. And yeah, it just forces you to be a better version of yourself without being cheesy. It actually is the case. And so yeah, I mean,
Well,
fuck
I would
shitcoinery.
agree that there is intellectual rigor, but there are also a lot of people that are just parroting, kind of the memes and parroting the selling points of Bitcoin too, and they don't actually have that intellectual rigor too. So of course you can't weed them all out, but I think the fact that even the quote unquote sheeple are picking up on Bitcoin memes is a pretty bullish sign.
For sure. I mean, it's like inescapable, right? I think Bitstein did a really amazing talk about this at the last conference in Austin, right? BitBlock Boom, speaking
2019.
about 2019. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was there in person. That
About
was
memeing
fantastic.
Bitcoin to the moon. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, man. I wish I
Fast
missed
forward
this
one
year's
year
edition. Yeah.
and you get MicroStrategy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. He will be there probably. Who knows, right? The
Uh,
ultimate Chad.
oh yeah. He better come to Bitcoin 2021. That's all I know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 2021, even like this is the year. It's you can't miss it.
Yeah, I agree, and it's already shaping up to be amazing. I know you're going to be there, and so is Knox, but um, yeah, a lot of exciting announcements to come. Let me just say that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
So
right now
Tib,
your headlines are Nick Szabo and this is skateboard guy, right?
yeah, Tony Hawk. Yeah, that was from 2020 carryover. We're still working with
Yeah,
them, so
yeah.
I'm excited for that. But Tib, I've been recording for like the past like 5 minutes, and I'm glad I
Nice.
caught you talking about like the Bitcoin community. This is the Bitcoin Magazine podcast, and I'm sitting here with the CEO of Knox Custody. Tib, how do you pronounce your last name?
Full name is Thibaut Maréchal. Maréchal. You can
There you
spin it with
go.
an American accent.
Well,
And
Tib
just to
Maréchal.
correct, I am not the CEO of Knox.
Oh, I'm
Alex
sorry, the
Daskalov is the
co-founder.
CEO.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's all good,
I'm
man.
sorry.
No, no,
Gosh,
no, no.
I gotta get my deets straight, man.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
no matter what, co-founder of Knox, and fantastic Bitcoin thought leader and writer and builder. And I'm really excited to have you here. And we're going to talk about a piece that you recently published on Bitcoin Magazine, "The Great Plague of Shitcoinery." And I'm excited to dive into a bunch of these little topics and kind of tease out what turned into a smash hit of an article.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been meaning to write this article for a long time. You know, like you have a bunch of articles that you stacked in your draft for months, and sometimes
That's
you
100%
revisit
of my
them.
articles.
Right, exactly, right. I mean, like a lot of Bitcoiners, I'm pretty sure it's like the same state of writing. And anyway, I was looking back at my backlog of articles, and I was like, damn, I should really write something about this shitcoin thing because we keep referring to it on Twitter, and it's become sort of a meme, and I keep having the same conversations over and over again with some friends on Twitter, with NIMS and all that. And yeah, I mean, it came along quite naturally. I was actually in the train to Paris to go and meet a few Bitcoiners over there from Nice in the south of France, and I was like, let's write it. Yeah, it came along pretty naturally. And in terms of really, I guess the thesis behind this article is that um, shitcoinery is nothing new. It's something that we've been experiencing for not only decades or centuries, but millennia. And yeah, you realize that the temptation to control money production overall has been around forever, since the dawn of time, since the Roman Empire, essentially minted their first gold coins. And yeah, it's just a different form, different sets of people, different narratives, but the same root problem. And this is exactly what Satoshi Nakamoto set to destroy in 2008 in October, when he published the white paper. And so I thought there needed to be a piece, just for myself, like as a clear evidence that I am not mistaken in believing that there is only Bitcoin that truly matters. And of course, I was kind of already pretty convinced of that state of life, right? It's not even a perspective to me. It's an irrefutable axiom of life that Bitcoin is the only implementation of money that does matter today and that will matter in the next hundreds of years. And so I thought there needed to be a piece to recap it all and sort of look back in history to sort of be able to project ourselves in the future and understand that phenomenon of shitcoinery, and how it is basically a massive misallocation of time, energy, and capital, and just reflect on that perspective.
Yeah. I'm someone who actually has kind of an unpopular opinion about the uses of shitcoin as they're implemented today, but I generally 100% agree with you in terms of the long-term trajectory and the fact that Bitcoin is the only thing that matters, and that is 100% true. 21 million is the only thing that matters. But one of my favorite things about your piece is your historical lens, because it really does show that shitcoining is not something that's new. And you go and you tease out and you define like seigniorage in this idea. So let's start with that. Like, what is seigniorage? How did it come to be? And how is it kind of something that people are wrestling over even today?
For sure, yeah. I mean, if you look at anthropology and you sort of study waves of human evolution, you look at, of course, the feudal societies and then state-driven societies and how they sort of evolved over time. And previously, roughly in the 14th century, seigniorage was already quite a predominant exclusive right and privilege reserved to a few elite, mostly lords. And lords had this ability to essentially mint currency using precious metals, and in the process of doing so were extracting a fee from it, which came from the French word brassage. Brassage means you're mixing things. And so essentially the process of seigniorage was that as a lord, you would collect all the coins on a given territory, um, essentially allowing the people, the pleb living on your land, to have access to a newly updated type of coin with, say, a new face of a lord or something. And in that process, either the lord would essentially dilute the metal composition of the coins and add a little bit of less valuable metal, and essentially create additional supply, right? Or later on, what we've seen was just clipping. Clipping was sort of I would say, was an orthogonal type of process outside of seigniorage, which would essentially reduce the sort of the metal component of a coin and essentially extract value from this. And then in both cases, you would just remelt the metal, and issue additional units of coins, and all of a sudden, that privilege of creating new currency out of nothing came about. And so that was the seigniorage privilege. And so it was really understood as a tax that lords would be able to enforce on the population, and merchants and other businesses using those currencies in that particular jurisdiction and territory would essentially be required to use the newly minted coin anyway because they had the new updated designs or whatnot. And so it was kind of a required taxation, right?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And the next step after you explained that history of seigniorage and what that looks like is you really put Bitcoin into the context of a decentralized mint. So it's not just this unit that's uncorruptible, but it's also this mint and this way to create and distribute currency that is also uncorruptible and completely decentralized. Can you kind of talk about that framing and why that is a good mental model to use?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, because the temptation to mint your own coin and essentially access to that privilege of seigniorage, the reason because it is so tempting to human beings, um, you realize that sort of decentralizing that ability and requiring um, people who want to access that privilege to actually show work, it sort of levels the playing field big time, because essentially you're allowing anybody to participate in that seigniorage, but they have to prove that they've done the work. And it doesn't matter who you know, doesn't matter where you're coming from, what status you have or whatnot, you have to do the work. And the network is completely immoral. It doesn't care about any of the other parameters that we've just listed. And therefore it really makes for an extremely fair arbitration mechanism when it comes to accessing that privilege of seigniorage. And yeah, I mean, it's a massive game changer, because it's been, again, a process that, or a phenomenon, or a problem that we've been struggling with for a long time. Some would argue that this problem has been around since currency has been around, pretty much. Because again, like, if you're looking from a super basic, even like biological evolution type of perspective, anybody, any plant, any animal want to be able to do more with less. Like, it's just, you want to be productive, you want to be efficient. That's how you accumulate surplus. That's how you know, save time. And that's how you basically take that surplus and additional time that you save for yourself to do other things and expand and grow and reproduce and take over. And money is essentially that. It's an instrument which allows you to do this. And so if you can produce anything, any money out of nowhere, for sure it's going to be tempting. And so anyway, yeah, it's Bitcoin fixes this big time. And so yeah, when you understand this, I think it's pretty trivial to realize that most other projects are actually just a continuation of the problem that Bitcoin fixes, because Bitcoin made the process by which one creates money trivially easy. Like, now anybody like you and I, we can go on one of these websites in the crypto or shitcoinery type of industry, and you can create a coin for yourself in an afternoon, maybe less today. And then you can market it to your friends, to other people who are, and naive enough or gullible enough to sort of believe in your narrative, and then buy the whole narrative. And so yeah, Bitcoin really, in that sense, is just extremely fair because it requires humans to actually do the work.
Yeah, and something that kind of speak to that specific point. I was on a panel with Jan Pritzker, the CTO of Swan Bitcoin, and he was talking about the long tail of shitcoins on the coin market cap, right? And he was saying that that's actually makes it easier to differentiate Bitcoin, because now you can be like, look at all this stuff. All of this stuff has been circulating and changing and never stays on this list for very long. And then one thing is consistently at the top, and that's Bitcoin. And it just makes it really easy. Like, how are you going to keep track of all this junk when and it's just so much easier just to like focus at that top thing. So even looking at like a country, a sovereign, Venezuela, although it is the joke of, you know, sovereignties at this point, they created a cryptocurrency. Like, right? It's trivially easy, but yet no one paid any attention. No one cared about it. It's just part of the noise that is, you know, the hydra of shitcoins.
Yeah. I mean, how ironical, right? That Venezuela mints their own cryptocurrency. And we have a group going in Europe now, the EU Bitcoiners group on Telegram, and we were sharing articles on that. Like the ECB, they've been pushing for a digital euro, whatever that means, because if you look at the amount of circulating supply of the euro, mostly digital today already. So anyway, someone shared an article around the bit pound, and the bit pound is actually a serious proposal by the Bank of England. Like, I wouldn't say it's a formal proposal; it's more of it's an exploratory avenue. But I mean, they've been public about it. Like the chairman or whatever role the guy has at the Bank of England, they've been explaining that the bit pound could be a thing where, as a sovereign state being able to mint their own digital currency, England would like to push that digital currency globally, so that they get back their reserve currency status that they've had back in the days, right? And
Lol.
yeah, right.
Everyone wants seigniorage. It just shows you. There's a
Yeah,
famous article written by Michael Goldstein, titled "Everyone is a Scammer." Everyone wants your Bitcoin. Everyone wants seigniorage. Everyone wants that privilege, and it's just so obvious now.
it is so obvious, man. I mean, like when you sort of see how all central banks are essentially struggling with, just the narrative of their currency, and the fact that most national currencies have been basically limited to a territory, and the only reason why these currencies still exist today is because of legal tender laws which protect them. And now you realize that they're all going to essentially battle to conquer other jurisdictions with, pseudo basket of currencies, or just better efficiency or better financial surveillance, or whatnot. I mean, it's an Orwellian future. It's absolutely terrible for consumers using those products, those financial instruments. But B, like, if you look at it from a pure like monetary Darwinism standpoint, like they have zero differentiator. Like, monetarily speaking, if you observe different properties that make up for good money, and we've sort of like, we know the list, right? It's like, has to be scarce, durable, portable, divisible, like the whole shebang. All these currencies essentially have the same property, the same list of properties, and so there is zero way to differentiate them, besides one particular component, which is the monetary policy itself, right? How aggressive the central bank issuing that currency, how aggressive is it going to be in essentially printing new units of it to fund government programs and buy bonds and other types of assets that no sane private investors would ever put on their balance sheet. And so, yeah, I mean, if you look at this from that angle, and I cover that point in the article, the market of money is a winner take all market, and it's a brutal fight of Darwinism that completely destroys all other competing entities, and there's only one winner, and that winner is essentially the implementation which has the most credible monetary policy. And the most credible monetary policy is a monetary policy which is immutable, which is verifiable by anybody, even someone with no computer literacy and no specialized hardware or skills in computer science or any other economic type of skill set, and that is Bitcoin. And so once you realize this, you're like, okay, essentially it's inevitable. Like as Bitcoin keeps on waking up different minds on the internet, um, you just realize that all these other fiat national currencies, they will try to compete on that scene. They will try to digitize, again, whatever that means, and they will fail. They will miserably fail, and Bitcoin will just take over. I mean, if you again understand the internet as a rising nation, which has no border, right? It's sort of it encapsulates any territory, any living human being. Well, Bitcoin, it's the native currency of that land, of that digital land. So yeah, it's gonna annihilate, most other money markets, as also most economic activity moves from meat space to the internet, and we're
It's already
seeing it
there.
today.
It's already there.
Right.
Most of it is
Exactly.
on the internet.
Exactly. Like you look at, the highest market capitalization today are companies operating on the internet, whether it's Facebook, whether it's, even Apple. Like the reason why Apple is successful, sure, they sell hardware devices and they make a lot of money from that, but like their hardware devices wouldn't be as valuable if they weren't connected in on the internet. So yeah, I mean, it's just obvious.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean that line specifically about Bitcoin as a nation and the world going digital, it's straight out of The Sovereign Individual, which is probably one of the most influential books in the Bitcoin community. So if you're
Mind
listening
blowing.
to, huh?
Mind blowing.
Yeah, I
This
mean,
book.
if you're listening to this, you gotta read this book. 1997, and really just way advanced on so many macro topics.
Yeah, yeah. I have to admit, shamefully, I haven't finished it yet. Uh,
It's like the Bible, man. It's like one of
yeah,
those books that you just slowly chew through it, and then you read it again once you're
yeah.
done.
Yeah,
But hey, so kind of transitioning, you did talk about CBDCs, which is like it's pretty crazy that we're calling central bank digital currencies a joke and shitcoins, and we're comparing them to these other shitcoins that are currently in the market. But all of these things, like you said, the only thing that really differentiates them on a monetary perspective is the monetary policy. Everything else is like it's already the same. They're all infinitely divisible. They're all digital. They're all whatever. um, so like talk about like when people are selling these shit coins, they're not selling the monetary aspect. They're selling the tech narrative. They're saying this has this technical superiority for whatever reason. But you're arguing that that's missing the point completely. Can you talk about like this perspective, like tech narrative versus the monetary narrative, and why you should be focusing on the monetary narrative?
yeah, most definitely. I mean, when I came to Bitcoin or crypto, um, I came from a tech background. Like I studied a little bit of information technology and computer science at school. I've always been quote unquote in the tech scene, and I was working at a venture firm. So I was the classic type of tech bro, and and so the
It's a good
technology,
life.
yeah, right, the technology revolution narratives of crypto, and in particular Ethereum as a global unstoppable computer, was extremely appealing. Like it felt right. I was like, holy shit, yeah, we can decentralize the web. Let's do it. Um, and essentially, what I came to realize over the years is that there are many different narratives competing for attention, competing for capital, and they're all wrong. And as a user, as an investor, as a potential developer, you want to make sure that you start off with the right heuristics, meaning the right approach, the right filter to make sense of this space and have and evaluate essentially what you're getting yourself into. And Bitcoin it's a monetary evolution. It's not a technology revolution. And a lot of projects are going to compete on that heuristic. They're going to essentially put in the minds of investors or developers even, and researchers and whatnot, or business operators even, that
VCs.
VCs, most definitely.
Bitcoin
Even like,
crushes VCs in intuitions.
yeah, no, definitely. But look, man, you look at developers, the Ethereum community, quote unquote, they attracted a lot of developer talent. Why? Well, because of the whole narrative behind like Turing completeness and like the fact that you could fit in as many things as you could in the base layer of the protocol. And, you know, people who understand public internet and computer protocol development know that different layers of protocols evolve and they are focused on different sets of concerns and optimize for different things and have different trade-offs in terms of security, performance, usability, and that's sort of expected. But that's beyond the point, right? Like if you really focus on the narratives goes as well. Ethereum or EOS or Tezos or all these other things that I stopped caring about, um, essentially compete on that heuristic and will attract people on the pseudo merits that they have better performance, that they have better marketing or better usability or better user experience or better developer onboarding
Dev
experience or
fund,
exactly dev
better grants.
taxes. Yeah, and or that it's more inclusive or whatnot. And in the end, all of that is noise because um, there lacks a fundamental element, in my opinion, which is the unforgeable costliness of a protocol and the sort of immaculate conception which came about with Bitcoin. And those two terms seems to be pretty, heavy loaded with like a lot of complexity, but they're pretty simple. Like the first one, like unforgeable costliness, it's like you can't fake the cost to write on the ledger of Bitcoin. Like if ever you want to add a transaction, if ever you want to have a write access to that database, you got to pay a pretty high cost. And so you're going to make sure as a rational human being or a rational business that what you're trying to write is honest and is worth it. Otherwise, you're just not going to do it, right? And so the second thing, when it comes to the immaculate conception, it's like it's pretty much a miracle that Bitcoin has been created because it was, the whole distribution of Bitcoin was fair. And I think Dan Held wrote a really good article about this back in the 2017 or 16. And Satoshi Nakamoto like didn't do any pre-mine, didn't do any sort of like um, accelerated vesting or whatnot. Like there was just work performed by CPUs. And some people would be like, yeah, but like it was CPUs before and now it's ASICs and ASICs are more expensive. So it's like less fair. And you're like, no, it's just pure competition. Back in the days, nobody cared about Bitcoin. It was just like, it was actually labeled as a failed project at birth. Like if you read the post on the forum in 2009, 10 or 11, and there's a really good book on this, by the way. It's the Book of Satoshi by a guy, I forgot the name of the author, but he did an amazing job basically going on all the forums and like putting together chronological orders of events of all these discussions. And it's phenomenal because you realize that even the cypherpunks, even the cryptographers, researchers, and people who were bullish on an e-cash on the internet actually disqualified Bitcoin right away. Like, you know,
Well,
anyway.
that's what made Hal Finney so amazing is because he was immediately interested and he immediately contacted Satoshi.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
Right. Yeah,
Hal
even
Finney
Greg
was
Maxwell like dismissed it, right? And maybe even Adam Back, like some of
Adam Back
prominent
also, I
Bitcoin
think.
people right now dismissed it.
Yeah, yeah. And I tweeted something, I think it was yesterday or perhaps earlier this morning. about this, like the fact that everybody's wrong about Bitcoin in the beginning. Everyone, whether you're in,
Everyone's still wrong.
global. Yeah.
Let's be honest. So we don't know nothing. Bitcoin's this huge
Oh,
elephant, and we're blind men just trying to figure out what WTF is in front of us.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I meant in the way that you reject it. That's what I mean, right? I think, yeah, the whole market is wrong. Bitcoin has been mispriced for the last 12 years and will be mispriced for a long time again. Who knows how long? But open-minded individuals who sort of like try to get rid of their pride and try to control their ego will sort of find a way and will find a sort of the ability to be open to the idea that money can exist in a different form. But anyway, back to the original point. Um, Cryptocurrencies are going to be leveraging that technological revolution narrative. And the unfortunate reality is that they will oftentimes, or most of the time, leverage the information asymmetry that is in the space, right? This notion that some people know more than others, and because there's an unnecessary level of complexity, when you look at cryptography and distributed networks and economics and all of that, as a noob, you're gonna have to trust someone to feed you with like information that you can't really verify at first. Because if you're trying to verify everything, you're just gonna go overload and information overload, and you're gonna burn out.
And I mean, even as you intermediate advanced, there's fractals of that. So like that's something that is pretty much never escaped in Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, personally, the more I learn about Bitcoin, and look, I spend 24/7 in Bitcoin. I mean, I dream about it. I wake up and read about it, talk about it, write about it, work in it. And the more I learn about it, the more I realize how little I know. And it's insane. And also the more I realize how early we are. And that's another interesting phenomenon. It's like anybody um, hearing about Bitcoin at first think they're late to the game. And they will look for the next Bitcoin. They will be like, okay, I gotta find a new project which has little existence, which can pump as much as Bitcoin have pumped in the past, and they will sort of fall in the trap of the technological revolution and the fact that new projects are more interesting, more efficient, and just better than Bitcoin. And that's how you get wrecked.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how you get wrecked. And it's the monetary thing. And it's going to be really interesting watching the Raoul Pauls, the Michael Saylors, these, very intelligent people that are discovering Bitcoin and jumping in heads first, you know, rub up with that narrative too, because we're already seeing, the real vision crypto and a lot of this stuff coming out of like that narrative. They obviously are understanding the Bitcoin memes, but they haven't quite dismissed the shitcoin memes and the tech narrative that you're discussing.
Yeah, I mean, so I would put Michael Saylor and Raoul Pal in different buckets. I think Michael Saylor has done his homework and he's a maximalist and he understands Bitcoin and he's a technologist, right? I mean, he's been writing about mobile waves and other like edge computing and other types of phenomenon or trends in the past. Um, and he's been pretty vocal about the fact that Bitcoin is a monetary evolution and the fact that there is no other implementation that has any chance of even competing. While Raoul Pal, even though he's a super smart dude and has a lot of interesting analysis to provide to the space, generally speaking, interestingly enough, he's a shitcoiner. he he tolerates, not even tolerates, but believes in the narrative that Ethereum will be a thing in 50 years. And that's interesting to me. I can understand that a quant is not going to care whether or not they invest in Bitcoin, or not invest, but trade in Bitcoin or bananas or Ethereum or any other type of shitcoin, because they're looking for one thing and one thing only, which is volatility. But and perhaps that is sort of the trading aspect of RailPal and other folks in the macro scene. But if you look at the fundamentals, there's zero fundamental for Ethereum. It's just a bunch of narratives. So very like different buckets. Like you realize how much skin in the game, for instance, Michael Saylor has. Because Michael Saylor, he sees this as, you mentioned it, right? Like he's not selling for the next 100 years. Sure, maybe it's a catchy headline and it's a catchy tweet, and maybe he's going to sell a bit earlier, probably, or who knows, right? Maybe he's actually going to hodl for 100 years. Good for him.
What percentage he sells, right?
Right.
I
Exactly.
feel like true Bitcoiners never sell all their Bitcoin. It's just how much did they apply a high time preference to?
Yeah, and it's also risk management, right? Like if you're overly exposed to an asset, and cash being one asset and Bitcoin being cash, you can like rebalance your portfolio. Like it's your at your discretion, right? As long as you have a plan. Um, but yeah, I mean the point is, again, like Michael Saylor he's a responsible business operator, he's a responsible CEO, and he's sort of decided that the best use of his additional dry powder was to be allocated to Bitcoin and not Ethereum and no other type of alternative implementation. And that tells you how essentially there is a real pragmatic decision making in allocating capital to Bitcoin as cash, and speculating on interesting and appealing narratives in shitcoin land.
So you bring up a fantastic point, and this is something that I see actually play out in use cases, right? So shitcoin land, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of leverage, a lot of pumping and dumping, whatever. Like that, it is a place for traders. But when it comes to people needing to tap into online liquidity, there's really only one place, and that's Bitcoin. And you can see this in practice because there are businesses now that are operating as money transmitters across the globe. Businesses like Value out of Colombia, Paxful, one of the biggest P2P exchanges, um, even Bitrefill, like that are tapping into Bitcoin's liquidity stream, and they're trading other things against it, right? So things like gift cards, things like smaller fiat currencies. Like you can burn millions of dollars worth of Bolivar against Bitcoin. There's very, very few currencies that actually has that much liquidity against a shitty currency like Bolivars. But because Bitcoin is this permissionless liquidity layer, this thing that you can trade anything against without asking for permission, it's this place that you can do that. And none of these other businesses are tapping into any other liquidity pool. They're all using Bitcoin.
Yeah, and when you look at network effects like Metcalfe's law and other types of network type of attraction and gravitational pools, money is the strongest, right? And Bitcoin being a monetized asset that will at some point turn into the globally accepted money. um, it's kind of it is the ultimate network effect. Like it is completely inescapable, and liquidity is the ultimate proxy of that. It's the ultimate metric. When we talk about like money being the most saleable good, salability is represented by liquidity, right? The most liquid an asset is, the most saleable it is, and the most money it is. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you look at the infrastructure that is being built around Bitcoin. Like the previous cycle of growth was around exchanges and building order books to essentially allow price discovery for Bitcoin. So now you have fragmented liquidity across so many different venues. like how many exchanges exist today, right? Like a lot. And interestingly enough, Shitcoinery has been a really good bootstrap layer, or bootstrap phase, I should say, for the, you know, the price discovery of Bitcoin and the liquidity strengthening of Bitcoin as a money, as a monetary asset. And
That
now
would be
that the
my argument
second,
for shitcoins. As a
definitely.
Bitcoin shitcoin apologist, that's my justification for why they're good. They are part of the Bitcoin ecosystem. You trade shitcoins against Bitcoin. It's part of, what Bitcoin is building.
Definitely. And I mean, like, if you look at what Preston Pysh has been saying, Bitcoin as a numeraire, right, as the sort of like unit of account for most investors. Like, I personally price most things in BTC now or in Sats because it still takes an active effort sometimes, but it sort of is that new paradigm for me. It's going to be the case for a bunch of fund managers and traditional markets at some point. But the point that I want to make here is that shitcoin traders, they already price everything in BTC. If they're pricing their returns in dollars, they're wrong. They're stupid, right? So most of these traders are already using Bitcoin as a unit of account. Now, going back to that, like, evolution of infrastructure, you've seen, so like, a, a rise in liquidity of Bitcoin across multiple different venues with multiple different order books, which is great because it gave Bitcoin multiple different venues where its price is discovered between buyers and sellers, right? And today, what we're seeing is actually the underlying pipes connecting those different venues. So it's like actually market makers and liquidity provisioning agents and smart order routers, which are essentially connecting all these venues where the price is being discovered, allowing the global liquidity pool of Bitcoin to flow on a 24/7 like stream. And it's amazing because now that you've gotten like actual good price discovery processes in different venues, you're now essentially moving a step further into the monetization process of Bitcoin with that new infrastructure. And at some point, it's just like you can't catch up on all of that infrastructure. It's just game over.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just kind of to talk about Bitcoin's advantage from having all of these different layers of exchanges and all of this different price discovery that's happening. There's some statistics that are emerging that are showing that the amount of trading time that Bitcoin has experienced, because it's a 24-hour nonstop market compared to the New York Stock Exchange, like Bitcoin has almost surpassed trading time. Like, the compounding growth, price discovery
Interesting.
from this just a nonstop trading is starting to really steamroll and pick up, and we're going to start seeing like Bitcoin is going to 2x the amount of trading time that every other asset has had. Like, it's going to start picking up on gold just because, I mean, yeah, gold is permissionless, but the official venues have been relatively, boxed off for a long time.
Man, you just blew my mind. Yeah, I just realized that. Yeah, it's like, it's like AI powered driving tools, right? Like Tesla's system or Google's, I forgot the name of that project, but the self-driving cars, they've accumulated more experience than any human being on Earth, right? Collectively, because like it's that system that keeps on feeding on different like nodes in the network of self-driving cars. And yeah, Bitcoin is the same for price discovery and monetization. It's fascinating. I'll dig into that.
Yeah, I think we're going to be putting out some stuff, not to tease it too early here, but keep an
Oof.
eye out for Bitcoin Magazine. So Thib, this has been an absolutely fantastic conversation and touched on a lot of different important topics for trying to like navigate through all the noise that is the cryptocurrency space. Do you have any last words you want to give to the Bitcoin Magazine audience? And I guess you can close off by plugging yourself as well.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I tend to think in first principles, and I think I've learned that from many other great thinkers on Twitter. Whether it's Matt Odell or Robert Breedlove or Marty Bent or yeah, a lot of these Bitcoiners who have that intellectual rigor. And I think thinking about, for instance, living organisms as sort of the ultimate proxy for how things evolve is a really good proxy to understand things in Bitcoin and things in life in general. And I think it's a really good way to understand how the Darwinism will play out in the monetary market. So I would strongly advise myself and other people to think in first principles and sort of observe nature and look back in history to make sense of the noise that is currently out there today. And yeah, I mean, I love speaking about all these things on Twitter. So anybody can reach me on Twitter at THIBM_. So Tibm. DM's open. And Telegram as well, same handle. So anytime.
Awesome. Well, again, Thib, thank you so much. I would highly recommend Thib as a follow on Twitter. I love engaging with you on there and just constantly updating and informing our audience about everything that's happening in the Bitcoin space. So make sure to give Thib a follow over on Twitter. Make sure to give Knox Custody a follow and keep an eye out for the innovation that they're pushing on the Bitcoin custody front and making Bitcoin accessible to all of these corporations and other entities that need to get access to it.
CK, thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right.
Peace, man.
Peace.
Ciao.